What happens when the perfect royal image is threatened by a child born different? What secrets did monarchies bury behind palace walls? This is not a fairy tale. This is the chilling truth about royal children born with Down syndrome, hidden, erased, forgotten. They were born with crowns in their blood, but were denied even their names. Centuries ago, kings and queens believed their children were destined by divine will. These heirs weren't just future rulers, they were living symbols of strength, beauty, and power. But what if one of them wasn't perfect? Imagine a baby born into a royal cradle, with soft hands and a tender smile, yet not meeting the expectations of court physicians. Perhaps they didn't speak early. Perhaps their eyes, almond-shaped and curious, were viewed not as unique, but as flawed. To the world, such a child might inspire love, but to the crown, they spelled scandal. Throughout history, children with Down syndrome or other intellectual disabilities were treated as curses, marks of shame, in families built on bloodline pride. Some were quiet. Let's talk about Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, cousins of Queen Elizabeth II. Born into British royalty, they were placed in a mental institution as young girls. They weren't just hidden, they were officially listed as dead in family records, while still breathing behind closed walls. No royal visits, no birthdays celebrated, just silence. It wasn't tea until journalists exposed their existence in the 1980s that the world learned the truth and people were outraged. How could such cruelty exist in modern times? But they weren't the only ones. Princess Alexandrin of Prussia, born in 1915, wasn't institutionalized, but she was excluded. Though she lived at home, she was kept far from public eyes. She was loved privately, but she was never allowed to represent the crown. And then there's the rare story of Compassion de Gaulle, the daughter of French President Charles de Gaulle. She was cherished, raised at home. Her father adored her. But even Anne remained hidden from the public, because her condition, Down syndrome, was still seen as a problem to be covered, not embraced. For centuries, royal courts across Europe valued image over humanity. A child born with a disability wasn't just a challenge. They were a threat to the throne. Historians now believe many royal babies who showed signs of severe disabilities may have been quietly killed, erased, before history could even remember their names. These weren't just children, they were royal children, and yet they were treated as if they had no worth. Today, children with Down syndrome attend school, play sports, build careers, and lead full lives. They are seen, heard, loved. But we must remember, it wasn't always this way. The tragic stories of Nerissa, Catherine, Alexandrin, and Anne remind us how far we've come, and how fragile progress can be. Behind palace gates, power often silenced compassion. Families feared judgment more than they embraced love. But by telling these stories now, we reclaim what was stolen. Their voices, their humanity, their place in history. Because no child, royal or not, should ever be hidden again. The prince behind locked doors. Imagine a palace room so silent, even the chandeliers seemed afraid to sway. Behind its heavy oak doors, a Prince George, the third son of King George III, sat alone. His name was Prince Octavius. He was said to be delicate, angelic, and far too gentle for the brutal weight of a crown. But behind the gilded portraits and powdered wigs, Octavius showed signs of epilepsy. His seizures were unpredictable, terrifying, and most of all shameful to the royal court. So the boy was hidden, rarely seen. When he died at just 4 years old, his father collapsed into grief. King George wept and cried, "There will be no heaven for me if Octavius is not there." But history barely remembers the boy. His story was too fragile, too uncomfortable to be recorded among kings. The secret sister of the crown. Not all royal secrets die in childhood. In 1919, two sisters Nerissa and Catherine were born into the British royal bloodline. Their cousin was none other than Queen Elizabeth II. But while one cousin ascended to global fame, the other two were erased. Nerissa and Catherine were born with severe intellectual disabilities, believed to be linked to Down syndrome. Instead of being embraced, they were institutionalized, hidden away in Earlswood Hospital. Their names were falsely marked as deceased in the official Berks peerage records. Why? Because a bloodline tainted by disability could not sit comfortably on a golden throne. For decades, the sisters sat alone in that institution. No visitors, no birthdays, no royal mention. Only in the 1980s did the truth emerge, too late for redemption. The girl who could never be queen, Princess Alexandrin of Prussia, was born into one of Europe's most powerful royal houses. Her father, Crown Prince Wilhelm, was destined to inherit the German Empire. But Alexandrin was different. She had Down syndrome, though the diagnosis was never officially written. Her fate could have been that of so many others, locked away, renamed, forgotten. But for a brief moment in time, the princess existed in both worlds. She appeared in photographs, smiling with her siblings. Yet she was never seen at state events, never heard giving a speech, never once mentioned in political plans. She was loved privately, but hidden publicly. Her life was a quiet contradiction, a royal in name, a ghost in legacy. Anne the Gentle, the daughter who changed a nation in 1928, Anne de Gaulle was born to Charles de Gaulle, leader of Free France, future president, and symbol of resistance. But Anne was born with Down syndrome. And while Charles could have followed the path of other powerful men burying the truth, he did something rare. He held her, walked with her, kissed her forehead in public. He called her my joy, and some say she softened his iron heart. But even in this rare love story, the world wasn't ready. Anne never appeared at state ceremonies. Her name was whispered, not praised. She died at age 20 from pneumonia. In her memory, her parents built a hospital for children like her. Even so, one can't help but ask, why did it take death for compassion to be accepted? The erased infants of empire. Not all stories have names. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the courts of France, Spain, and Austria quietly disposed of children born wrong. If a baby didn't cry the right way, walk at the right time, or look like a portrait of perfection, they vanished. Sometimes to monasteries, sometimes to basements, sometimes nowhere at all. Midwives were given silent orders. Mothers were told their child died in the night. In truth, the child lived, but not for long. These were the unwanted heirs, the cursed, the blemishes on divine monarchy, and their erasure was so complete, we only know they existed from slips in letters, odd expenditures in royal budgets, and 1 or 2 scattered bones buried without a name.